Okay. 5 o'clock, let's call the meeting to order for the Westfield Redevelopment Commission on 4/18/22. John, if you take roll call, please.
I will do that. Doug?
Here.
Jill? Here. Bob? Bob? Linda? Linda? Joe?
Here. We have a quorum.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. There is one minor change to the agenda. We do not have any claims for approval tonight, so you can scratch that item off the list. Next item up is for the approval of the Redevelopment Commission meeting minutes for March 21st, 2022. Any changes or modifications from anyone? I have read through them. They appear to be okay. There's a couple minor typos that I think we need to correct, John, but you and I can go over that separately.
Yeah, I just had one typo at the very end.
Yeah.
Give that my initial is wrong on the last vote,
Oh, okay.
on the items.
Oh, Jill
Okay,
Doyle
yeah,
should be
I see
J.
it. It's-
J.
J. Doyle
yeah.
instead of L.
With those corrections, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I'll second that motion. John, if you take roll call for approval of the minutes?
I will. Doug?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bob? Linda? Joe?
Aye. Okay.
Passes.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the ratification of the current Grant Park user agreements that Matt has supplied for us. Good evening, Matt. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission members. Matt Trini, Grand Park Director for the record. So previously sent over all of the contracts that were up for ratification. As noted in my email, there was not any contracts that were of great significance. The only difference between this round of contracts and the last was that there were a handful of sponsorship agreements that were included. So hopefully those didn't raise too many questions, but happy to answer if you guys do have any.
Were those agreements that William and his firm were able to obtain for us?
So on behalf of Grand Park Legacy Sports Group is out actively selling sponsorships for Grand Park, and we're able to secure those sponsorships.
Glad to see
on our app.
Malnati's in there. That's one of my favorites from my hometown.
There you go. Yeah, great source of revenue for us. So
Great, excellent, okay. Do I have a motion for approval of the Grant Park user agreements?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion. Motion by Jill, second by Jill Plankus. All in favor? John, if you'll take roll call, please.
Doug?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Bob? Linda? Joe?
Yes. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you for that. Next item is, again, Matt Trinian, Grand Park Review. Matt, all yours.
again, yeah, Matt Trinian here, Grand Park Director for the record. Wanted to prepare a Q1 review for your guys' view here. This presentation has been pulled together from my staff, the Legacy Sports Group staff, and Bullpen Tournaments collectively. Really, my vision here was to ensure that we had all prominent partners involved with this presentation as it related to each entity's business for the first quarter. So Blake will be here shortly, and William is here to present on Legacy's behalf as well. So wanted to start here with our just overall statistical data for the first quarter. As you can see, got off to a decent start in Q1. We do have some cancellations that we'll discuss that led to some drop in certain areas, but overall, very good start to the year in first quarter. And these numbers are inclusive of the field sports, diamond sports, and event center traffic. As we continue, wanted to share our financials for the first quarter here. So as you can see, revenues came in a little over $1.2 million for the first quarter, and expenses came in a little over $1.1 million. So a few comments to note here. We did have a few cancellations that impacted our revenue line, specifically with IFJ. By the way of contract, they are paying for utilization of the space, not like many of our other contracts where they reserve the space and are held to that. So received some negative impact there. And then just some things to note on our Q1 expense line. We did all of our annual maintenance of all of our equipment in Q1, and we felt some of those impacts of some labor increases and some supply increases there. The other thing to note here is in quarter one and we paid for Legacy Sports Group's first two installments as it's a quarterly budgeted item. We paid for quarter one and quarter two in Q1. So I just wanted to make comment of that there. Those will be routine installments by quarter, but felt like it was necessary to point out that we paid for 2 quarters worth of services within the first quarter.
No, just one quick question, Matt, on the expense side. What type of percentage increases are you seeing for your supplies and labor?
Yeah,
or your
it's
projects?
quite significant. It depends on kind of between grounds versus ops versus maintenance. But yeah, we've seen significant increases in the labor for our cleaning services. Some of our materials have gone up, and as you'll see in one of our report lines, we've actually worked to remove all paper towels inside of the campus. Now that we've kind of gotten that relief from the state for COVID purposes, so we went back to hand dryers inside to try and reduce some of those costs. But yeah, it is quite significant. So as we roll into our department updates, I'm just going to break this down into our different departments within the Grand Park piece here. But our administration,
Matt, if you could hold on for a second. John, Linda needs a call-in number. Can you text her, please? I'm not sure. Or if you want to give it to me, I can reply to her text.
She's looking for a call-in number for the link. Right?
Well, you can do it by phone.
So that's the number.
Okay, so it's, let's see here, 1-812.
With this though, she won't be able to see anything we pull up on the screen.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. That's a problem. 266-9238. 238.
And then the extension is that last.
Extension, was it 392?
392.
Okay, wait a minute, 393-92.
184
184
56
56.
and pound. I don't know if she has to. Okay,
Pound. Okay.
we'll give her both options.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Matt. Sorry for the delay.
no problem. So we left off here at department updates. I wanted to just give you guys a breakdown of within Grand Park. We have several different business units that I would call different departments. So as you can see in the administration category, wanted to just share again that we did have that transition from being fully city staff in our operation unit to working with Legacy Sports Group under our current agreement. What I would say there is that we've had a great seamless transition. I think overall we've worked through a few things, but collectively with the knowledge base of both groups working together, we've come together and had a smooth transition there. Overall, we've welcomed 3 full-time members and 5 part-time members in Q1, so we do have a lot of new faces. So work to get them educated on kind of our processes and procedures and get them acclimated with the facility, and that's gone very well. And then really have enjoyed the time that we've had to grow our relationship here between myself and this group to further develop Grand Park as a whole.
Okay, now, were these additional payroll people for the city then, Matt?
Correct. Everything here is for my department.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
From a visitor experience standpoint, our grounds crew had a glowing review of while they were removing snow, they helped some individuals into the event center and received high ratings from there. We've also received a lot of high ratings from our field care and our staff assistants just throughout all of our events. The one negative remark we received in regards to visitor experience dates back to the volleyball event that we hosted, and that really revolved around just viewership of the courts. And through our post-event recap with not only the event but internal staff, we've come up with some alternative solutions to fix those problems for future events. From our grounds department, as mentioned earlier, we had all of our equipment repurposed and ready to go for the season, done in the first quarter. We were very busy with painting nearly 100 fields in the first quarter, and then they did a great job of maintaining all safety features of removal of snow and ice.
Now, you say 100 fields, we don't have 100 fields.
That's correct. So we had different paints throughout the first quarter. So as new events
Some
come
for
in,
lacrosse, some for
correct,
whatever.
correct. It equated to 100 fields in total, just with the variety of fields that we used in the first quarter. Client services, as you guys know, the client services department does a great job of working with all of our events, but really highlight the 4 consumer shows that were hosted in Q1, dating back to the Gaylors, the Whale of a Sail, Suburban Indy, and then the Shipshawana on the Road show that was hosted in the first quarter.
Now, that was the first time that show was here, right, Matt?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Are they coming back?
We're talking to them now about that. There were some findings at the back end, but we're working through that.
Okay.
And then, there were a lot of small meetings and private events that were hosted that our client services team worked through in the first quarter as well. From a facility standpoint, our maintenance team did a great job. They've installed 3 water bottle fillers. It seems small, but looking to reuse a lot of the assets that we have on campus, and those have been great additions. Mentioned earlier, we've removed all paper towels from the facility, going back to hand dryers only to save on some material costs. And then a lot of parking lot maintenance was completed in the first quarter of this year. From an operations standpoint, notably, we hosted the college football playoff practice. We've spoken a little bit about that previously. Academy Volleyball and Star Spirit were some new events to the facility. So Academy Volleyball was a volleyball event. And then Star Spirit was a cheer event that was hosted at the facility. So work through those. As we work into other operational pieces, there's a lot of new growth within the group. So a lot of new faces acquainted to our policies and procedures. So work to get them up and going. 5 new members in total. And then we work to recondition all of our goals for the season, getting ready for the year. So just some major updates from those departments. Wanted to make sure I shared those with you guys. And then at this point, I am going to flip it to William to give the Legacy Sports Group updates.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Am I allowed to? Yeah. All right. You got it. There you go, William.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening, William. Or good
How are ya?
afternoon yet, right?
Sorry, there we go. Get close. So Matt touched on a lot of things related to the operation. This is more, we'll kind of switch gears and look at the more business development, marketing, and sales side. This first slide, and all of you are able to see this presentation prior to today, so hopefully you got a chance to take a look at it. But this first slide is just a quick snapshot of Q1 dating back to 2019. It just kind of shows our trajectory from an overall visitation, from unique visitors to all the way to visits, and then individual athletes. And as you can see, we're kind of back to where we were historically. 21 was a phenomenal year for us. As you all know, it was a record year for us. A lot of that was due to a lot of activity we picked up from COVID that was not able to take place in other areas. I think Blake will speak a little bit to that as well. But now that we're starting to realize some of this Q1 activity for 22, we're starting to see ourselves normalize a little bit. These numbers will look drastically different if the events that Matt spoke about that canceled this first quarter actually took place. Those are some of our largest events for the first quarter, and just due to weather, it was very unfortunate that we couldn't host those. As you can see from the second slide, and this kind of looks at the revenue that comes in off of some of those rentals, we just missed our Q1 goal, and it's directly as a result of those events that were canceled. So had those events actually taken place and we had gotten paid, we would have hit all of our goals for Q1. So we'll continue to monitor that and get an understanding of what that means for the rest of the year. But a $70,000 loss in the first quarter of the year is never good. So we'll keep an eye on some of that and report in future meetings as to what that'll do to the overall number for the end of the
Now,
year.
just looking at the chart though, William, and realizing again, last year was a quirky year. You're still doing better than you have in
Yes.
other 2 years.
So if we were not in the position of kind of rebounding from COVID, and a lot of things happened in '21, we picked up additional activity, and because of COVID, individuals were not paying us on their regular schedule. So deposits that we would have received in '20, we received in '21, so that further
Okay.
allowed us to have a more impactful year in '21.
thank
So while we budgeted high, we wanted to be very Yes, we budgeted high early to be very optimistic, knowing that we had some of these challenges, but given what we knew was already in the process of being rebooked and what we thought could come in, we are still fairly confident that we'll be able to hit the projections for the year. On the marketing side, this just kind of gives a brief update on some of the social posts that were put out on behalf of the park through our marketing partner. A lot of activity took place in Q1. Matt and the team hosted our annual summit, which was a huge success. I think the largest attendance we've had since we started it. We had well over 150 people in attendance. But that's always a good touch point where we can get with our local constituents, whether it be hotels, restaurants, or attractions, to make sure they're aware of what we do, what we're doing for the coming year, and how they can get involved. So we'll continue to keep those individuals engaged. And then we just highlighted and showcased some of the other events that took place throughout the year as well. Matt also mentioned some sponsorship activity. We're excited. 19,000 in this first quarter. We're looking at almost doubling that in Q2 based off some of the current negotiations we're going through. We've got a few big ones that are still on the hook, but this is the first opportunity we've had since I've been a part of the park that has someone on staff, outward facing, selling sponsorship. So while this is a small number in comparison to our overall budget, we hope that we can deliver significant on this throughout
Now,
the next couple of years.
is this just a quarterly payment?
This is just quarterly.
Okay, so do you have a contract that's annual then with these?
So there are annual contracts, multi-year. Most of these are multi-year agreements.
Okay.
And at times, we will sign a one-year agreement, but most are 2 or 3 year agreements.
Okay.
What some of these, like S&H RV and Resorts, that's a unique agreement. While they paid us a fee for the digital assets that we're sponsoring, we also will receive a commission on all campsites that are reserved through their site that use our promo code. So in addition to the base sponsorship, there's a revenue share with that one. And
Right.
we've got another similar concept coming with someone we hope to deliver for Q2.
Okay, excellent.
And then a lot of activity in the Research and Development Hub. We're still kind of managing a lot of those opportunities with some of the clients we have and are pursuing others with some other groups that have reached out to us or we've reached out to. Had a really good call with a group around esports this past week that we could engage to not only for the competition side of it, but what we're looking to do with the esports, the Research and Development Hub. So we're excited about kind of bringing that to you once it gets flushed out a little more. So I think that's all I have. I'm going to bring Blake up, and I think we'll answer questions at the end.
Okay. Any questions? Doug, you have any questions for
Yeah.
William?
I have a question for William right now. It's unfortunate that we did not secure the revenue from the 2 events that canceled because of the snow. But my question has to do overall. And for some of the larger events that we have, like Whale of a Sail and the Gaylor event and some of the other larger ones, I'm wondering if we have ever considered event cancellation insurance, because in many cases you have a large sunk cost
Yep.
that you've put forth as far as your time and effort and possibly some other operational costs. And if we have not considered that with a deductible that's larger than, you're not going to worry about some of the smaller events. But I'm just wondering if we should consider down the road, because if we've had cancellations this time, they're going to happen again. And at some point, we may want to smooth out our expenses and revenues a little bit. And I'm just wondering if you've considered that.
Yeah, you bring up a very interesting point, and yes, we have considered it and had discussions around it as recent as this last month. What we will be recommending to Matt and the team here soon is that most events of a significant size carry that insurance. Some of them already do, but they're the owners of those policies, and it replaces their revenue.
Right.
This
But not
particular,
ours.
yeah, this particular event, this nuance is a little different than most because it's a user that we have a stakeholder agreement with that is different than our user agreements. As Matt mentioned earlier, their usage is based on consumption. So they don't pay if they don't use the fields, and that's just for this one user. So I've had conversations with the organization, and they carry a policy themselves. I've talked to them about us coming in together and looking at doing a policy for future events so we can avoid this.
Okay,
Thank you, Doug. Jill, any questions?
thank you.
Okay, Linda, are you on by any chance?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good, thank you. Bob, are you on by any chance? No, Bob evidently wasn't able to make it. Okay,
Okay. I just wanted to ask William, because you all were talking about trying to get things to trying to get these different agreements to run for 2 years at a time. How is that going, and how are you projecting that out? What are you seeing?
We still have the concept in place that we're doing the 2-year rolling agreements. Candidly, because of everything that's happening right now, we've paused on some of the long-term bookings because we're going to have a discussion with Matt and team probably in the third quarter about the rate card. So all of our agreements, which we can put language in there, it could be subject to the current rate card. We're just going to pause to make sure our rate card is in line. Our current rate card goes through 25, but we might, just because of everything that's going on in the world, we might not be able to hold to that, and that is a big asterisk on there that says it's subject to change. So while the current rate card goes through 25, we might be evaluating a change for 25. So we're not contracting beyond 24.
okay.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up rate card. That was my next question. Okay. So you are planning to talk about that third quarter?
Yes, we're going to give ourselves a little time to kind of get through what we need to get contracted, and then we're going to have that discussion with Matt and the team.
Okay. And when Blake starts speaking, could he speak to that on their side?
He's coming up now.
Okay, great.
Good evening, Blake.
How we doing? Thank you. Blake Ibler, Bullpen Tournaments. I'll address that, I guess, right off the bat with rate cards and all of that stuff. Our rate cards are year to year. We aren't as aggressive. 90% of our rentals are through 3 partnerships, and we only rent out for practices. So those rentals are WISI, which the rate card would not apply to. The Indiana Bulls, which are one of our main tenants, and the Indiana Nitro would be the third major kind of tenant. 90% of our rentals are to those 3. The fourth largest group would be the Indiana Titans. So we work out pretty much individual deals with each one of them. Some have indoor needs, some have outdoor needs. So we leverage ProX, Bullpen, all of that together. So from a rate card standpoint, we go year to year. We work with those tenants, and it occasionally increases, and we just kind of stay kind of in that market rate as best we can when we compare ourselves to other folks. And then to the insurance and things of that sort, we have not carried event insurance yet. We are the event owner, so when you talk to us, obviously, like the way I see it is Bullpen Tournaments is going to run the exact same spring shootout for the next 10 years. It's under contract because we're here. The events were built for Grand Park specifically, so they're not going anywhere. So it's kind of it's a business decision at that point for us as to how we handle our customer. So this year we added an event March 20th, which was earlier than we've done in the past. We held a college event that was supposed to be first year, was supposed to be 2019. It was snowed out in 19. It was COVID out in 20 and COVID out in 21. So we were still holding credits from 2019 for that event. So that's 4 years, or 3 years, whatever, that we've been holding on to those credits. So for us, it's been more handle them that way. We've lost, people know what to expect in April or March come baseball. So when you look at our numbers, this is half of what we did last year in March, and that's because of weather. We had far less practices. We had our one large tournament got canceled in its entirety. So when you look at quarter one, we're not real active anyways, except for March. And February, we're active if it's sunny, and everywhere else is wet. And that's based on college baseball. There's not a lot of contracts. There's not a lot of negotiation. It's literally need-based. The people we're dealing with are smaller budgeted schools. IU's not coming to play here anymore. Purdue practices here in January until they go south. And then beyond that, everything else is, Division IIIs, NAIAs, or Butler is probably the only other Division I school that practices here. So that's kind of our first quarter. I guess for us, our update's more looking forward. The turf project has started. We completed the first field. It got done in 4 days. The second field is the turf is removed. We were able to do it Saturday, Sunday this past weekend, so those guys kind of cleared everything off on Easter. We lost today. Hopefully, we will get enough weather to finish that before Friday, so we'll impact 0 tournament play, which was awesome. It's a different green. It's one thing that probably surprised us a little bit. From a play standpoint, it's going to play fine. The actual surface looks great, but we're excited to have it done. And if you can already notice a huge difference in just how much the technology in turf has come along in the past years. So I think you'll see a better play product on the field. And then we start this weekend kind of being full for the rest of the year. So this upcoming weekend, we're using 34 fields, including Kokomo. Basically at about 100% utilization rate Friday through Sunday. The only thing you'll see is we still, due to the umpire shortage, we have to play at 10 o'clock at night on Friday night versus 6 p.m. single games because we don't have every field lit. Getting umpires to come in from out of state for one game on a Friday night is really challenging. So 16 high school varsity baseball games were canceled this past week. So we are not the only ones fighting it. And 2 years ago, I would have sat up here and said 80% of our umpires are from out of state. And we've reduced that number to about 10%. So this past weekend, we had 2 guys from out of state that were on the field. So sounds like a small accomplishment for us, though. It's a huge accomplishment. It's the path we needed to go, and has been one of the things we've fought for the last 8 years. So, moving forward, I think our numbers are going to be really good. As long as the weather will cooperate, we'll play baseball. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Blake.
Yep.
Appreciate the report and update. Thank you very much.
Can I go back to William and ask, when he was talking about all the things going on in the world, could you expound on that or give us a little detail of how you're looking at that? Because I know you're kind of in communication with people around the countries, but tell us what you're saying specifically that affects us.
Yeah, so rate is being driven by demand, obviously. That's how it works in most industries. But what we're starting to see is that there are more event opportunities out there that will pay a higher rate, candidly. And because of the way that the facility is maintained, we can charge that higher rate. So we're going to explore that. What we've done starting this year, instead of changing the rate for the actual field, we've incorporated fees for the associated items that individuals need. For instance, Matt referenced painting of 100 fields. Before, our $85, $135 rate would include field paint. That now is removed, and that's an additional cost. So that kind of gave us a little bump there, and we will probably see, not probably, we will see some additional revenue based off of that this year. As we look at 25, it became very apparent to us that we can move the needle a little more and still be within the market rate. So we wanted to make sure we took advantage of that.
Okay, any other questions, Linda?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, William.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly just summarize good overall first quarter for all three parties. Really looking forward to Q2. And as Blake was mentioning, this weekend is really going to be a kickoff to a huge event week or event month for us. We'll have about 280 soccer teams on the field sports side of the facility this upcoming weekend, accompanying Blake's 150, 200. How many teams do you have this weekend? 240 teams. So
Wow.
almost
Be a busy place.
yeah. So as you can tell, it's really ramping up, and we're excited for what Q2 has in store with these events starting. Again, opening the grass side of the facility and really hitting the road running here this weekend. So if you anticipate on coming out to the park, let me know. We're glad to get you on a cart and show you around, and be a great weekend for us.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Any other
Appreciate it.
questions for myself, William, or Blake?
Any questions, Doug or Linda, for Matt?
Nope, none here.
Okay.
Awesome.
No,
Thank you, guys.
appreciate the report.
Yeah, appreciate the update, Matt. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Executive Director Cam Starnes.
Yeah, just a reminder, I think you're all aware, the Redevelopment Commission has the statutory authority to appoint an executive director. You've had one in the past. In the interim, Jeremy Loweller has been named Chief of Staff, of course. It's my understanding his assigned duties include working on Grand Park matters and economic development, redevelopment projects. And in light of that, thought the time was right to have that discussion. I will say there's not a lot of definition or parameters provided in statute as to what an executive director of a redevelopment commission does. So should the redevelopment commission vote to appoint Jeremy as in that position, I would then work on a resolution that could more formally document the authorities and responsibilities and duties and expectations of that position to be considered at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think some of that was defined, but not very well, Cam, in our original resolution when we appointed originally Todd Bertrand. It was pretty nebulous, so that certainly would be a help if we could do that.
Certainly.
Well, I'll move to appoint Jeremy Loweller as Executive Director for Grand Park. Do I have a second?
Just to clarify, that would be Executive Director of the Redevelopment Commission.
Right, I'm sorry, Executive Director, Redevelopment Commission. Thank you for the correction.
You just took Matt's job.
Yeah, sorry about that, Matt. I was wondering why you were squirming out there. Okay, do I have a second?
Joe, this is Doug. I will second, but I have questions I'd like to discuss
Sure,
before
yeah.
we take a vote.
Okay, yeah,
if I
we'll
understand
have, we
Cam
can have
correctly-
discussion now, since we have a motion on the
Okay.
floor. That's fine. Go ahead, Doug, what's the discussion questions?
As I understand what Cam was telling us, he is going to develop a document to outline the duties and responsibilities and accountabilities of the executive director position. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So should we now appoint Jeremy to be the executive director, or should that take place after we've had an opportunity to review this document? That's my question.
Well, that's entirely your decision. Wanted to just reiterate that authority exists under statute, and you could appoint now and fill in what your expectations as a commission of the responsibilities and duties of the executive director are, or do that all in one fell swoop. That's really entirely your providence.
If we wait for a period of 30 days, what's the downside of waiting 30 days? Can you give us any ideas, Cam?
I cannot. That would be outside of my purview as legal counsel, I think, as to whether there'd be any downsides to waiting. Jeremy or John or other staff may have reasons that they would want you to consider, and I would welcome their input on that.
To address that question, Doug, I would assume at this point that Matt would be handling all of the affairs, that he would have to be able to sign off on items until we officially appoint an executive director for the commission then. Would that be a valid statement, Cam? In regards to what's happening with Grant Park, I mean, the scope of the job is beyond just Grant Park.
Correct.
Can
It
I,
is.
I'd like to say something because I believe our, the one that was passed in 2017 and Todd was appointed to, that was clearly listed as the executive director for Grand Park duties. And because there were so many more and that he could then, that person, Todd Bertrand at the time, could give duties to William Knox as the director of Grand Park. I would like to know two things. The last paragraph of that document, setting him up as the executive director for Grand Park on behalf of the RDC. I did not like the last paragraph at all where it said that we would ratify whatever he did. I don't think that's following Indiana code. And I know, Cam, you said it was a little nebulous. However, the authority still rests with the RDC, not the executive director, that we then ratify any decisions that he has made. So I would like to see that wording change for sure. But the other thing I want us to consider is, since we now have, Ken Coker managing Bullpen in agreement, his firm, we now have Legacy Sports managing, and for the other side of the park, and we still have Matt as the director of Grand Park. I would think we need to see what you're going to write in this document. And I know Joe just said that it can cover more than Grand Park. It can. It didn't in the last document, but if it's going to, I think we should know that before we decide, because do we need one for any of Grand Park, or what other duties do you see? So I'm not ready to vote tonight on appointing anybody till I know exactly what it's about.
Yeah, and I would just clarify that 2017 resolution is not on the table. That's irrelevant. That predates me. That we would be starting over.
I assumed that you, well, I shouldn't say I assumed. I figured you would, because I don't think that was a great document. Go ahead.
we'd be starting over, and it would be, it's up to you all to decide what those roles are. We have a ratification procedure in place. I don't think there's been any discussion about disturbing that, and it allows Matt and his role with Grand Park to continue business at the pace that it needs to be conducted, at which it needs to be conducted. So I don't think there's I've not heard any inclination about making that kind of a broad authority grant, although it really is entirely up to the commission.
I think you've both raised some good points. I certainly don't have any problem on tabling the motion until next meeting, and we can get some definition with a formal resolution that Cam would develop. So if all the commission members are okay with that, let's table it, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next month.
Joe, let me ask one more question. So in order to facilitate the ongoing efforts of the RDC, should we consider granting Jeremy a temporary authority for, say, a period of either 30 or 60 days so that life can go on, but we still come back and have a document that we can review and approve? I don't want to hold anything up from the RDC standpoint and have to call an emergency meeting on a moment's notice to approve something. So that's just a thought.
Jeremy, do you see any issues if we wait till our next meeting, or should we have an interim step?
So I guess my only thoughts are, I'm on a daily basis after filling Todd's role. I've been working on behalf of the RDC, whether it's discussing development agreements or working with Matt on anything associated with the Grand Park.
Right.
It would be nice to have at least a temporary conditional approval that would allow me to keep business going while we define the terms, if no one's opposed to that.
Okay, good point. Okay, Doug, Linda, can I modify, are you guys okay if I modify my motion to be a temporary 60-day approval? Pending a review, pending a more concise definition?
I'm fine with 60 days.
Okay, Linda?
I guess I'm not totally convinced what business we're not able to do without this for 30 days. So I would just put it off until we see the document.
Okay, because
would
you
be my
got
preference.
you got to keep in mind the business that is coming before us tonight is all work that Jeremy's done on our behalf. So at this point, the original person was Todd Bertrand that was giving those duties. Yeah, and as you point out, it addressed the Grant Park portion of it, but there were other duties that he picked up with our okay in essence.
Are you talking about the developer agreement?
And other documents that he works with the developers on or our legal people to bring forward to the commission.
Well, it's just very different from what our original executive director document 2017 was. So this is quite the change. It sounds like is what is coming. So
Joe,
you can
I
make
would
whatever
recommend
motion
that
you want.
Joe, I would recommend you withdraw your motion and re-propose your motion to include a 60-day temporary authority, subject to a written document provided by CAM outlining the duties, responsibilities, accountabilities, and so forth for the RDC to review and to vote upon.
Okay, I think, that seems to me to be an appropriate way to go. So I will withdraw my original motion and make another motion basically stating exactly what Doug stated. So Doug, if you want to consider that a motion, I'll second your motion.
Oh, that's fine. That's my motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Discussion.
I don't understand, without a document, what are his responsibilities and what are we committing to ratifying what he's doing without having a document?
No, you're not. There wouldn't be any legal basis for that under statute, I don't believe. I think it's really just a documentation that recognizes that a lot of that economic development, redevelopment work, including development agreements and other items, are part of his role and duties as chief of staff and also serve and benefit the Redevelopment Commission. So it really is as I understand the motion that's been made, and without a document that shows specific duties and responsibilities, really just kind of an administrative matter to indicate that Jeremy is fulfilling that function that's important in the background in the meantime, so that we can then fill in, with your all input as to what his duties and responsibilities and powers will going forward under that resolution.
Okay,
Still
so,
confusing to me because I don't know where we draw the line because between he's doing this under his chief of staff position or he's doing this under an executive director position based on what I see our past executive director did or what other cities' executive director. I don't know that I feel the real need for this, so I'd rather see a document.
Jeremy?
So
I'd like to call for a vote,
My
Joe.
opinion. Yeah, call for a vote. It's fine.
Okay. John, if you take a roll call for the motion to basically designate Jeremy as a temporary executive director for 60 days until we have a formal resolution that we would vote on at the next meeting.
Okay. Joe,
Yes?
Linda,
No,
Bob, Jill,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Thank you. On to the next item, Jeremy, Union Street Development Agreement.
Thank you. For the record, Jeremy Loweller with the City of Westfield. Before you tonight for consideration is a development agreement between the City of Westfield, the City of Westfield Redevelopment Commission, the Westfield Building Corporation, and Union Square LLC. You should see the terms should look familiar to you, and specifically tonight, you are voting on the term sheet itself that has been before the board, or the commission, sorry, prior, and was also approved by the city council. So with me tonight, I have Catherine Finello, our legal counsel from Dinsmore, and also Justin Moffett, who's going to make a few comments on the development agreement itself from Union Square Plaza LLC. So, and then following that, we will all be available for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Justin Moffett with Old Town. I think most of you are way past familiar with this project. We've been talking about it for many years. Just give you a frame of reference here. We have continued to march forward with planning the Union Square mixed-use development. The actions that came in front of this body last year were related to a addition of property that was rezoned by the city council that we are calling a phase 2 to the overall Union Square development that sits just east of Grand Junction Plaza and north of the Midland Trail. So that enabled us to add in additional future assessed value. So I think that will be familiar in me bringing that up. And then additionally, we brought forward a term sheet that memorialized the parameters for us entering into a development agreement with the city of Westfield and this body. So really, this development agreement is just the additional clarity around that term sheet. So basically, it provides all the finer terms of the deal, and we took that before the council earlier this year, and that received favorable approval. So we're really just walking through the steps in the process required by state statute. So this is really, it shouldn't be any new information to you. Glad to answer questions, or if there's anything that made it into the document that is ambiguous that we need to further define, glad to have that conversation. But really, this is just a next step in memorializing the process that we agreed to provide bond funds for us to build a public parking garage that would be shared by the Union Square development. So if it would be available to the residential tenants in that development along with the commercial tenants, but it would also provide publicly available spaces within that garage. Just as a reminder, though, we own the Phase 2 project site that was added into the TIF allocation area, and we have agreed with the city that we would make that publicly available parking on an interim basis. And so while we're building the Phase 1 of the project, it's already been cleared out. The demolitions happened on that site. The older undesirable buildings along Union Street have been removed, and there's already use of that as surface parking. So hopefully that's been a positive addition to our parking dilemma in downtown. But glad to answer any questions, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Let me open up to commission members for questions. Linda, you have any questions for Justin or Jeremy on this?
Yes, I do. In fact, I have an email I received from Mike Johns today that goes along with what I was going to comment on. This is from Mike Johns, president of the council. He says, Linda, it's come to my attention that the Union Square project is on tonight's RDC agenda. I do not think that consideration by the RDC is appropriate until the underlying issues regarding the ownership of the subject property are resolved. Shortly after the council approved the Union Square garage project, I became aware that there were several curious issues with the sale of the city-owned parcels to Old Town through an RFP. On February 22nd, I advised the mayor that I had learned that the RFP offering the 5 city-owned parcels for sale included a minimum bid of $550,000 or $230,000 less than the $780,000 appraised value.
Linda, I apologize. I'm going to need to interrupt you. I know that
Yes.
there have been some issues raised. It's my understanding the city and the developer are working with the council in an attempt to resolve those. There's been an executive session noticed coming up here, and prior to that, and in deference to the council not wanting to get out in front of them and their purview to consider this, I would caution you against discussing anything that's confidential in nature, including the details of what you're initiating discussion of here. I would say, from my perspective, as to the development agreement, it does contemplate a number of foreseen and unforeseen circumstances between the execution of this development agreement and closing. Closing is contingent on the resolution of those items. The issues that you raise are one of those items. So should the commission desire to proceed with approval of this agreement, I think that would allow things to move forward support a potential resolution without presuming that there is any resolution and that closing may or may not ultimately happen.
And Cam, this is Catherine Finello, bond counsel, attorney with Dinsmore and Scholl. I would agree wholeheartedly with your comments. The development agreement is subject to further proceedings under law. So I won't belabor the point, but agree with Cam's comments.
Okay, and I would like to say that I don't believe the information that I was going to address this evening was confidential by any means. It's all available in public records. The request for quote was public. What came back was public. The appraisals we have copies of. The deed that the mayor signed over to Union Square Plaza is public. The check received is public. So I'm not sure exactly what, Cam, you don't want me to be careful of speaking about, because just in the purview of the public, there are some serious issues, which I believe this is why it was pulled off of our February agenda, because that's when this became known and we got the final documents. So I have a concern about all these things that we did not actually sell that property per Indiana code, which is what, 36-111-4, I believe, which is listed in the bid. And I don't know how we continue with this developer agreement based on not resolving that issue. I realize time is becoming important because this is still showing that they want to start construction in June. It's now April, but this issue has been known for at least a couple months now, or going on a couple months now. And I think it's something that that we need to look at, because even though the statement was made on February 14th that Union Square owns the property, if it wasn't sold per Indiana code, I think that has to be resolved. And it's not hidden, it's not private information. It's all out there in public records. You can go to the courthouse, you can go a lot of places to get this information. But I'm really concerned that we would continue this developer agreement before that is resolved. And I think another issue is, and perhaps Catherine is familiar with this, is the $6 million, the resolution 01, well, maybe it's 11/2019. In December of 2019, the RDC passed a resolution for $6 million for this development. It's not mentioned in the developer agreement. I'd like to know, does it need to be, should it be, or are we all aware that there's that $6 million based on receiving 75% of TIF dollars to cover that, in addition to what's listed here for the garage? And then if we go back to the bond agreement for Grand Junction Plaza, there towards, I think that was 26, 27 pages, but towards the end, it talked about that there was 5 to 10% of that bond approved that could be paid to a business or a developer, and perhaps that could be used for Moffett. I think Jim Crawford was involved at the time. I talked to him about that. But knowing that these developer agreements, I think in the past, the terms have been changed. I think we've run into developer agreements where someone understood something and someone else understood something else. I'd like this developer agreement to be very clear, and I'm not sure, but what the council isn't going to have to amend the developer agreement, but something's got to be done about this sale and ownership of property. So
Yeah, again, I've outlined how this moves forward. There are a number of contingencies that are contemplated between execution of the development agreement and closing. If those contingencies are addressed suitably between the developer and the city and the council, again, not getting out ahead of the council here, then closing could potentially occur. If they are not, then presumably closing would not occur. And that's the way forward. I think the approval of this development agreement as it's laid out simply allows the process to continue.
If I may speak to a couple of the issues raised, I have no reason to discredit anything Ms. Noss's sharing about the information that has come to light regarding the transfer of property. And I want to clarify from Old Town's opinion, our position, when the RFP was let in late 2019, I believe, early 20, no, it was late 19. I would say there was even maybe some ambiguity about the way the RFP was written on our end, and our cover letter even stated, we are clarifying, these are the properties we are placing a bid on. We had no availability of appraisals or knowledge of what they would be. So there was a minimum bid requirement, and it was very clear, and that's also public record, that we were bidding for those 5 parcels. That rounded out the project. So if there was an error that was created throughout the process, that was news to us when this was brought to our attention the last couple of weeks, or maybe last few months. So we're aware of the conversation that's been happening behind the scenes with the council and RDC regarding this topic. And we're stuck in the middle, to be honest with you. We would like a resolution. We have worked for 3 years, invested millions of dollars, and we are now subject to interest rate risk, cost increase, and we're kind of done waiting. And so I'm going to implore the RDC and the City Council, if they have issues to resolve, please resolve them, because we can't afford to keep waiting on the City of Westfield to move this issue forward. We're already having serious challenges based on all the uncertainty created around these issues. I do believe that if there is a resolution, we want to be part of it. If there was a failure to address an appraisal, if there was an error in the RFP process, and there is an additional amount of monies owed, great. Let's resolve that and move forward. Present something to us. We didn't create the issue, but we'll gladly participate in the resolution, because we've now seen interest rates go from the 3s to the 5s. We want to participate in a solution. We just want the information and move it forward rapidly and not continue to delay the process, which is seemed to be what's happened in the last 2 years. Regarding the previous $6 million possibility for TIF proceeds, that was related to a resolution presented to the council that was adopted in 2019. That never made it to a project agreement. So this supersedes that. This would take the place of that. We never got to a development agreement. So that's, from our understanding, again, I couldn't tell you, Catherine would have to address the legal process if there needs to be some sort of confirmatory resolution making that null and void. But we have operated with understanding that this new approval, term sheet that council approved last year, RDC approved last year, that's now made it into this development agreement, is the new working document. And it would take an act of the RDC and council to create any document besides this one. So those funds don't exist in our view. We are using the 2 TIF allocation areas and the assessed value that those spit off to fund this bond issuance. So that said, I think that addresses that. Again, Linda, I would agree that if there needs to be some confirmation of that, we would have no problem with it. I had no idea what was being discussed related to a 5% or 10% or fee. That, if there's something that we need to address there, glad to provide some backup information, but I didn't really understand what that was about.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Justin. And I wasn't saying that anything of this was caused by anything that you'd done. It's a really unfortunate series of errors in this bid process. And you probably weren't privy to a lot of those things. But we do have this resolution 11/2019. If in fact, Catherine or Cam, you would think that we should rescind this, remove this resolution so there is no confusion of whether it goes with the developer agreement or not. But I think we need to clarify that. Sometimes we just forget to cross our T's and dot our I's on some of these things, and it gets real confusing as we get further down the road. And I understand, Justin, time has been clicking away. Okay. And I really thought this issue on the sale of the properties would have been resolved by now, because that was in February, mid-February, when that came to everyone's attention. And it's just been kind of, everybody's saying, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? So maybe, Cam, you think there's a process in place, and I think we should resolve these things so that we clearly know what we're looking at in this agreement.
And Cam, this is Catherine. If I may address the prior bond ordinance and documents that the RDC adopted back in 2019. I actually was with Krieg at a former time and actually worked with Mr. Crawford on those documents. So I'm familiar with them. So Linda, I think that's a very great question. It was my full intent to actually repeal any previous bond ordinance. So the bond ordinance goes before the council. And so when they go to adopt the bond ordinance in connection with this project, what we would do is to insert a paragraph that we would be repealing the prior bond ordinance, because as Justin correctly noted, those bonds were never issued, the project has changed, and now we are moving on to this very expanded, a little bit different project. So we would look to appeal any prior bond ordinances. And then we would come back to the RDC with the related bond resolutions as far as the tax increment pledge from the allocation area. We would be repealing the pledge that I believe the RDC gave back in 2019 related to the 2019 bond ordinance. So we would repeal all of that in those resolutions. If you would like to, include that in the resolution that goes with this development agreement, we could certainly add a paragraph to that, stating that. But I will be developing that concept much further as required, as I feel is required under the bond documents, to make sure it is very clear in all of the resolutions related to the RDC and the council as we move forward with the bond process. There will definitely be resolution repealing prior actions.
Okay, and in this development agreement on the first page under bonds, it does state that the last sentence, payable from a pledge of lit revenues by the Common Council to the extent the tax increment is not sufficient.
Right.
So clearly, the council has to be totally in favor of this. We have no authority over lit.
Correct. And that's why, as Cam mentioned, the development agreement is subject to further proceedings under law by all of the bodies. So
yeah, and that's why I was.
Yes,
that's why I was trying to introduce what the president of the council was telling me today, is that they think that there's some investigation that is happening now, needs to happen, and there might need to be some changes, even though they approved this development agreement. I'm just sharing that.
Yeah, no, and a good question, but I did want to expand on your thoughts here that we are definitely will be repealing any of the prior actions taken back in 2019, since it has evolved into this project. And that's kind of normal. We do that. It happens from time to time. And then we will go back, if a prior document has been approved, we insert a nice little paragraph that says we're repealing, and anything that's inconsistent or, something to that effect, those actions are repealed, and the new actions, the new resolutions, the new ordinances, are the controlling documents. Then I did also want to, I think I know what you're talking about on the Grand Junction, the 2017, the 5% or 10% fee. I'm wondering if that was related to private activity. So I believe those bonds were issued as tax exempt bonds. So we have a 5% or 10%. There's no money being given to anyone. What it says under the federal tax code is that that's regulating private use of a tax exempt bond funded project. So that's just saying you can't go over certain thresholds, but that does not provide any money to any developer or any money. That's not an outlay of money. That has to do more with whether there is private use of the facility or the project, depending on what that is. So all stuff under the federal tax code with respect to tax exempt bonds.
Okay, so Catherine, are you saying that we don't need to rescind this resolution passed in 2019, that we wait until there's a new bond document presented with that
Well,
paragraph and that takes care of it?
That's certainly up to you if you want to know something now, but even if you do something now, I'm still going to be putting language in the documents that are going to be coming before the RDC and the council with respect to the bond approvals and the tax increment pledge and stuff like that. I'm still going to be putting language in there that repeals prior actions back in 2019. But if you feel something needs to be done right now, that's certainly the will of the commission, the redevelopment commission. But I'm letting you know that that is definitely on my checklist, and it will be in the documents coming before you at a later date, assuming the project, everyone approves the development agreement and the project moves forward.
And Catherine or Cam, could we make a motion tonight to rescind Resolution 11/2009, or what is the proper motion you would require?
May I speak? Sure. I want to be really clear. I guess you have ultimate control over that. But if you fail to progress with this current development agreement, I would like that to remain in place. So I would respectfully request that is only done subject to your approval of the new development agreement.
Well, and I would like to add to that, because I don't have that resolution in front of me. I need to make sure that we are not repealing something that shouldn't be repealed. And usually what we do is we go back to those documents and take out the language in those documents if we're moving forward with a different project or an amended, bond ordinance. Or amended and restated bond ordinance. So I would just caution against doing that, or else go down the path that Justin just,
And I understand.
But I would like that subject to bond council review, and I would prefer that, or I guess my advice is that I would caution you against doing that until Cam has an opportunity to review, I have an opportunity to review, and that's reviewed with Justin as well.
And I appreciate Justin's comment. I'm just looking at it from the other side of we're the RDC, and if we approve this development agreement and we still have this other in place, then they're both in place in that moment. Even though there isn't a bond agreement, we've been held to these developer agreements in the past. So can we table this to next Monday's meeting or our next meeting?
We are not going to table it, Linda. We're going to act on it tonight, one way or another.
Okay, you go.
Cam, your comments?
I do
Follow up on.
want to affirm that there is agreement around what Linda has shared, though, that we would not be moving forward with the two agreements. And so I'm glad to go on record acknowledging that as the developer in the agreement, that we would not expect both agreements to stay in play. But I also understand this is a linear process, and we've already lost a month. And I would respectfully request that if the RDC intends to take action on this, we do it immediately and keep moving, because there are still other steps we have to go through with this body and council.
Cam?
Yeah, perhaps it encapsulates everything to have a motion that would approve moving forward with this development agreement subject to the future sort of removal or vacation of any previously adopted resolutions which are inconsistent therewith.
Well
Okay.
said, Cam.
I'm going to make a motion for approval of the development agreement as presented with the comments in light of what Cam has indicated, that if there are other documents that need to be rescinded, vacated, adjusted, or modified, that those would be done with the help of legal. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Jill Doyle. Discussion.
My discussion then is, should the council in the resolution of all this come up with an amended developer agreement, then we would understand that would come back to us, correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
That would be my expectation.
Okay, Doug, any comments?
None here, thank you.
Jill, anything else?
No, we just need to move this
We
forward
need
so
to move
that
it
Justin
forward.
can get moving.
This is a $69 million project. Millions of dollars have been invested. I've been personally invested in it for almost 3.5 years. And we need to move it forward. There's other steps that will be taken by council and other bodies as we move this process along. This is one step. Interest rates are going up. Mortgage rates went up 1% in the last month. We can't wait any longer. We need to move it forward so we can get the process where they can lock in the interest rates that we can best incur with this inflationary environment we have. John, let's take roll call.
Joe,
Yes.
Linda,
No,
Bob, Jill,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1. One person missing. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Keep working on it, Justin. Got full support. Let's make it happen.
I'm not trying to put it into it, Justin. I just want the process and all the paperwork in order so that we all understand what's happening and when.
We all want that. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, John, before the commission? Additional business? Cam?
I do not have any items.
I don't have anything else. Anything for good of the order from commission members? Okay.
Nothing here.
Seeing none, do we have a motion? I'm sorry?
Joe, I just wanted to say, because we didn't have a committee report, did you have anything to say about where we are on the tree park committee?
No, we're not going to do anything with that. Got pending RFP on Grant Park. We're not going to do anything else in the meantime.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Yep. Okay, just for clarification. Appreciate the question, Linda. Thank you. Okay, have a motion for adjournment?
So moved?
Second?
Second, Linda Nass.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Meeting's adjourned.